There is a search and rescue coordinator in Devon who has been working Dartmoor for over 20 years. He has found people in bogs, in ravines, at the base of tors, miles from any path, in conditions where survival should not have been possible. He has also not found people who walked into the moor with maps, with phones, with companions, and simply ceased to exist. He says the same thing in every interview. The moor does not care. It is not malevolent. It is not haunted. It simply does not care whether you come back. And on a clear summer day, with a map and good boots and a weather forecast that says sunshine until 6, it is very easy to think that the moor will care about you specifically. Then the cloud comes in. In this video, we are counting down 13 unsolved disappearances on the British Moorlands. Not accidents, not tragedies with clean explanations. Cases where the investigation ended, the searches stopped, and the person was simply never found. Stay with me to the end, because number 1 is a case that has been investigated by police across 5 decades, where a family has walked the same ground every summer for 50 years, where the location is almost certainly known to the person who caused it, and where the answer has never come. In the autumn of 1978, an experienced hill walker set out alone from a car park near Princetown in the heart of Dartmoor. He was 53 years old, physically fit, well equipped for the conditions, and had walked Dartmoor dozens of times. He signed the parking permit for 3 days. After 5 days, when he had not returned to collect his vehicle, the police were called. A search was mounted across the relevant section of the moor. His tent was found on the 3rd day of the search, pitched in a sheltered hollow about 7 miles from the car park, everything neatly arranged inside it, his sleeping bag laid out as if he had just stepped out for a short walk. His walking poles were propped against the tent entrance, his boots were missing. The search extended across the surrounding moorland for several weeks and found nothing more. The inquest, held the following year, returned an open verdict. The coroner noted that the combination of Dartmoor's terrain, its sudden weather changes, its deep bogs, and its extensive areas of ground where a body could lie undiscovered for years created conditions in which no definitive conclusion was possible. There are moorland features on Dartmoor known locally as the Dartmoor Stables, deep cuts in the peat where a body could descend and never surface. He has never been found. His tent was taken as evidence. His car was eventually impounded and destroyed. His boots have never been located. The hollow where his tent was pitched is still there. Walkers pass it every summer. In June 1991, a 26-year-old PhD student studying moorland geology at a northern university drove to the North York Moors to carry out a solo field survey. He had done this before. He knew the area. He carried survey equipment, a GPS unit of the period, and had told his supervisor he would be back within 2 days. When he failed to return, his supervisor waited another day, then called the police. His car was found in a lay-by on the Whitby Road. His field notebook was on the front seat. The last entry dated the day of his departure, recording a survey location about 4 miles from the road. A helicopter search found no trace. Ground teams searched for weeks. The geological survey location he had noted in his notebook was reached and found to contain samples he had apparently collected. The sample bags, tied and labelled in his handwriting, left on the ground beside a clear depression where someone had been sitting, taking notes. The samples were tested. The notebook was analysed. Nothing anomalous was found. He had been there, conducted his survey work, and then at some point between that location and his car, 4 miles across open moorland, ceased to exist. The North York Moors are not Dartmoor. There are paths, farms, villages visible on clear days. The absence of any trace, any witness, any indication of what happened in those 4 miles has never been explained. The case remains open in the cold case files of North Yorkshire Police. In August 1985, a married couple in their early 60s drove to Exmoor for a short walking holiday. They booked into a bed and breakfast in Simonsbath for 3 nights and checked in on the first evening. The following morning, they left after breakfast at approximately 8:30 and were not seen again. Their bags remained in their room. Their car remained in the car park behind the pub. Their walking boots were missing. Their waterproofs were missing. Everything else, their luggage, their return train tickets, their medication, which one of them needed to take daily, was left in the room. No note, no phone call, no card payment, no CCTV appearance on any camera in the area. The search that followed was extensive. Exmoor's terrain includes deep river gorges, extensive forestry, and areas of high open moorland where visibility in bad weather is zero. Two bodies were never found. An inquest recorded open verdicts for both. The family described both individuals as in good health, financially stable, with no known difficulties in their marriage or lives, and with no history of depression or mental health concerns that could explain a voluntary disappearance. The double disappearance from the same location, the deliberate leaving behind of luggage and medication, and the complete absence of any physical trace creates a set of circumstances that the official investigation never adequately explained. In March 2003, a 17-year-old boy from a village near Sheffield walked out of his home at approximately 11 in the evening. It was cold but dry. He was wearing casual clothing, no outdoor equipment, and was carrying his mobile phone with a full charge. He had argued with his parents earlier in the evening, an ordinary argument. He texted a friend at 11:40 from a location that, when the mobile signal data was later analyzed, placed him approximately 2 miles from his home in the direction of the Peak District moorland. That was the last communication. His phone was never found. His body was never found. The search of the moorland in the weeks following was extensive, covering the area his signal data suggested he had been moving toward. The Peak District in that area includes deep gullies, disused mine shafts, and peat moorland that can conceal indefinitely. No evidence pointing toward any specific cause was ever found. His parents have continued to campaign for his case to remain active. He would be 39 now. In September 2012, a 41-year-old ultramarathon runner set out from Oakhampton to complete a solo crossing of the full northern section of Dartmoor. He carried a GPS tracker that uploaded his position to a website his family could monitor. His family watched his progress for the first 6 hours. Then, at approximately 2 in the afternoon, his GPS signal stopped. The last recorded position placed him on the open moor approximately 12 miles from Oakhampton at an unremarkable location with no features that would explain a stop. The signal did not fade. It simply stopped. A search and rescue operation began the following morning. Dartmoor Search and Rescue deployed full resources across the area around his last GPS position. Nothing was found. The GPS tracker itself was never found. Running shoes matching his brand and size were found 8 weeks later in a stream 3 miles from his last position, but could not be definitively identified as his. The manufacturer of the GPS tracker confirmed the signal stop was consistent with physical destruction or immersion of the device. How a device designed to withstand ultramarathon conditions was destroyed or immersed at 2 in the afternoon on a dry September day in a location with no obvious body of water nearby has never been explained. In November 1997, a professional wildlife photographer drove to the North Pennines to photograph red grouse on the moorland above Allendale. He was experienced in moorland conditions, had been photographing in this area for 15 years. He was found by a farmer 6 days later, lying face down in a stretch of open moorland approximately 3 miles from his vehicle. He was alive. He was suffering from severe exposure and dehydration. He had no injury that explained his condition. He did not know how long he had been there. He did not know where he had been for the days between leaving his vehicle and being found. His camera was with him, undamaged. When the card was examined, it contained photographs clearly taken in daylight during his disappearance, including one image that appeared to show a human figure at a distance, indistinct, possibly a trick of the light and the heather. He was hospitalized for 10 days. After discharge, he was interviewed by police. He was cooperative and genuinely unable to provide any account of where he had been or what had happened during those 6 days. No evidence of assault, chemical incapacitation, or neurological event was found to fully explain the amnesia. He never returned to photography. He moved away from Northumberland the following year and has given no interviews. In October 2006, a 22-year-old student visiting Cornwall drove to Bodmin Moor and parked near the Jamaica Inn. He sent a text to a friend saying he was going for a walk and would be back in a couple of hours. He was not seen again for 8 days. He was found by a shepherd, severely dehydrated and disoriented but alive. He was airlifted to Truro Hospital. He eventually recovered a partial account of his time on the moor, fragmented and internally inconsistent. He described becoming disoriented in fog, attempting to navigate toward lights he could see in the distance, never reaching them, and losing track of time entirely. His medical examination found this consistent with his physical condition. What it did not explain was the finding, at the location where he had sent the text, of his phone, his wallet, and his car keys, placed carefully on a stone beside the track, as if he had deliberately left them there before walking onto the moor. He had no memory of doing this. He was 22, in good health, with no history of psychiatric illness. In several media interviews since, he has described his 8 days on Bodmin Moor as something he cannot explain and has chosen not to try to explain further. The deliberate placing of his possessions on the stone has never been explained. In July 1962, a family of 4, a husband and wife in their 30s, and their 2 children, aged 9 and 11, set out on a day walk from Postbridge on Dartmoor. They were experienced walkers. The weather was clear and warm when they left. It changed rapidly in the early afternoon. A fog descended. The family was not on an exposed route. They were following a well-marked path, as they had described to the landlord of their bed and breakfast. None of the 4 was ever seen again. The search that followed was one of the largest mounted on Dartmoor to that point. It covered the route they had described, the surrounding moorland, the river crossings, the bogs. Nothing was found. No clothing, no equipment, no physical trace of any kind. An entire family of 4 people, in good weather at departure, walking a known and marked route, vanished from Dartmoor on a summer afternoon. The investigation concluded with an open verdict and a note about the terrain's capacity to conceal. The children would be 72 and 74 now if they had survived. No explanation has ever been offered that accounts for the complete absence of any physical trace of 4 people walking a marked path on a clear summer morning. In February 2019, a 67-year-old retired police officer with extensive experience of moorland terrain set out for a walk on the North York moors from a car park near Helmsley. He was fit, experienced, carrying a full survival kit, including a personal locator beacon of the same type issued to mountain rescue teams, and enough food and water for 48 hours. His wife called police at 5 when he had not returned. His body was found 11 weeks later by a hill farmer, approximately 6 miles from the car park, in a location search teams using thermal imaging and ground teams had covered during the original search. The cause of death was exposure. The coroner recorded accidental death. What the coroner did not explain is why a retired police officer carrying a personal locator beacon, in good health, calm enough to leave a normal voicemail 11 minutes before his estimated last position, never activated the device that would have brought help within 40 minutes. Between 1968 and 1975, 3 teenagers from a children's home in Plymouth were reported missing after leaving the home on day trips to Dartmoor. The trips were organised and supervised, part of an outdoor activities programme. In each case, a teenager failed to return from a specific section of the day's walk, the absence not noticed until the group had returned to the minibus at the end of the day. In each case, the subsequent search found nothing. 3 teenagers from the same institution, on similar supervised trips, disappearing from the same general area of moorland over a 7-year period. The children's home was closed in 1978 following an unrelated inquiry into conditions at the facility. The records of the outdoor activities program, including the rosters of who attended each trip and the names of the supervising adults, were among the records destroyed when the home closed. The police reviews conducted in later decades found insufficient surviving documentation to mount a comprehensive cold case investigation. 3 children went to Dartmoor and did not come back, and the records that might have helped explain why have been lost. In May 1988, a 58-year-old ornithologist travelling alone to Shetland to observe breeding birds checked into a guest house in Lerwick, hired a car, and drove out to the moorland to observe red-throated divers on a locan he had visited on previous trips. He called the guest house that evening to say he had had a successful day and would be back in time for dinner. He did not arrive for dinner. His car was found the following morning on the moorland track beside the locan. His binoculars were on the car roof, where a birder might rest them momentarily before getting back in the car. His bird notebook was open on the passenger seat, the last entry recording a red-throated diver observation, the ink dry. The locan was searched by divers brought from the mainland. No body was found. The moorland around the locan was searched on foot across multiple days. No trace was found. The binoculars on the car roof have never been explained. Whether he placed them there on his way back to the car, intending to return momentarily, or whether they were placed there by someone else, is unknown. He has never been found. In January 1999, a hill farmer who had worked the same stretch of Welsh moorland in the Brecon Beacons for 30 years failed to return home for his evening meal. His wife raised the alarm at 8 that evening. The farmer was found the following morning in a location that presented no obvious explanation for either his presence or his condition. He was on open moorland approximately 2 miles from the boundary of his own land. On ground he walked regularly, in conditions he had navigated for 3 decades, lying on his back with no visible injury, dead from exposure. He was wearing his normal working clothes, which were entirely adequate for the conditions. His dogs, 2 sheepdogs that always accompanied him, were found sitting beside him, alive and unhurt but unwilling to move when the rescue team arrived. The dogs were healthy and well, showing no signs of the distress or disorientation that would be expected if they had been on the moor overnight in difficult conditions. Their behavior indicated they had arrived at the location recently, not hours earlier. How a man who had worked this land for 30 years, in familiar conditions, came to be dead on open moorland 2 miles from his own land, and why his dogs appeared to have arrived with him recently despite his having been reported missing the previous evening, has never been explained. On the 16th of June 1964, a 12-year-old boy called Keith Bennett left his home in Longsight, Manchester, to walk to his grandmother's house. He was abducted by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. The Moor's murders involved the murders of 5 children between 1963 and 1965. 4 of the victims were found. Keith Bennett has never been found. Brady and Hindley were arrested in October 1965. Brady confessed to the murder of Keith Bennett in 1987, 23 years after he killed him. Brady claimed, across decades of correspondence with Keith's mother, Winnie Johnson, and with journalists and detectives, to know the precise location of the grave on Saddleworth Moor. He provided maps. He led police to the moor on multiple occasions. The searches that followed, using cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, excavation, and every available forensic technique, did not find Keith. Winnie Johnson campaigned every day for 33 years to bring her son home. She was awarded a public honor for her dignity and persistence. She died in 2012 without knowing where her child was buried. After Brady's death in 2017, the hope that a deathbed disclosure might finally identify the location vanished. Brady died without saying. The location of Keith Bennett's grave is, in the view of the investigators who have spent the most time on this case, known to no living person. Saddleworth Moor is not a remote wilderness. You can see it from the motorway. You can drive across it on the A635. Keith Bennett is 12 years old on every document that bears his name. He has been 12 years old for over 60 years. And somewhere under that moorland he is still there, waiting to be found, by someone who no longer exists, on a moor that does not care.